Bill Gates' English story, Dropout to Billionaire Success. On a crisp autumn morning in Cambridge, Massachusetts, a young student hurried across the campus of Harvard University. His classmates carried heavy books, their minds already mapping out the safe and predictable future promised by one of the world's most prestigious schools. But this student, Bill Gates, carried something else, a quiet storm of ideas, restless and insistent. He had entered Harvard with all the brilliance one could hope for, but soon discovered that the lecture halls could not contain the speed of his imagination. While others memorized formulas and case studies, Gates spent long nights in front of glowing computer screens, dreaming of software that could change the way the world worked. He was not failing his classes. He was simply listening to a different call. That call was risky, uncertain, and at the time seemed almost foolish. To leave Harvard before graduation. In the language of the world, he became a dropout. Yet, in his own language, he was stepping into destiny. The image of a young man walking away from ivy-covered walls into the unknown has always fascinated people. Could it be that leaving the safest path is sometimes the only way to find the right one? Gates's story challenges us to question what success truly means. Is it the certificate framed on the wall, or is it the courage to chase something invisible until it becomes real? Before we continue, let me welcome you. This is the Learn English Listening channel, and I'm Lydia, here to walk with you through stories that sharpen both your English and your spirit for growth. So let me ask, which city are you joining us from, and what hour is it there? The years that followed were not as glamorous as history books sometimes suggest. In the mid-1970s, Gates and his friend Paul Allen began shaping their dream in a small garage. There was no guarantee of success, no investors lining up with open wallets. Instead, there were sleepless nights, broken machines, and constant doubts. For a young man labeled a dropout, the pressure was even heavier. Every setback seemed like evidence that the world had been right. Maybe he had made the wrong choice. This is a familiar feeling for many between the ages of 25 and 40. At this stage of life, expectations can feel suffocating. Careers must advance quickly. Relationships should be steady, and financial security is supposed to be building. But what happens when your reality does not match the script? When promotions pass you by, or when a relationship falters just as your peers seem to be settling down, you begin to wonder if you are falling behind, even when you are quietly doing your best. Bill Gates was no exception to this emotional tug-of-war. His friends from Harvard were finishing degrees, applying to established companies, and stepping into stable lives. Meanwhile, he was wrestling with the fragile foundation of Microsoft, a company still unheard of. He had to convince not only the market, but also himself that his vision mattered. For anyone listening today, perhaps you feel the same kind of weight, the fear that you have gambled too much, or chosen a road that others will never understand. These doubts are natural, but they do not define the final chapter of your story. They are simply the middle pages, the part where the character is tested before the breakthrough arrives. So I want to ask you, have you ever felt stuck in this same way? What separates a life of quiet regret from a life of impact? For Gates, the answer was not talent alone. It was the ability to see mistakes as teachers and innovation as a daily practice. He carried the label dropout, but instead of treating it as shame, he turned it into fuel. A dropout, by definition, is someone who leaves school early. Society often attaches failure to the word, yet Gates redefined it. To him, leaving Harvard was not the end of education. It was the beginning of a different kind of classroom, where the lessons were written in code, contracts, and human trust. This mindset points us toward the word innovate. To innovate is to do something new, to build where nothing stood before. Gates and Allen did not simply improve what already existed, they dared to reimagine the way software could connect with personal computers. While the giants of technology focused on hardware, Microsoft poured its energy into making software accessible to ordinary people. That choice, born out of innovation, set them apart. But innovation alone is not enough. Along the way, Microsoft released flawed products, missed deadlines, and faced criticism. Here, the phrase "learn from mistakes" becomes vital. Gates never hid from errors. He examined them closely, sometimes obsessively, turning them into blueprints for the next step. Each failure became a hidden key, unlocking the next version, the better version. For those listening today, your dropout moment may not involve leaving school. It could be leaving a job, changing a city, or stepping away from something that no longer fits. What matters is not the label others give you, but how you innovate from that point onward, and whether you can learn from mistakes instead of being crushed by them. That is the hidden key to resilience. And perhaps the most overlooked truth is that innovation rarely feels glamorous while it is happening. It often looks like messy drafts, endless corrections, and long nights with little reward. Gates did not feel like a genius in those moments. He felt like a student again, fumbling forward. That humility was the real hidden key, one that anyone can carry. By the mid-1990s, Microsoft was no longer a fragile startup. It had become the beating heart of the digital revolution, powering millions of computers worldwide. But with success came a storm. Governments began to question whether Microsoft had grown too powerful. The word monopoly echoed in courtrooms and newspapers, painting Gates as both a visionary and a villain. Imagine the weight of that contradiction. To the world, he was a symbol of progress, yet in the same moment, he stood accused of stifling competition. Testifying in court, his every word dissected, his every expression analyzed, Gates faced not just legal pressure, but the judgment of history. It was the kind of trial that could erase decades of work. For anyone who has chased a dream, you may recognize this paradox. The very thing you pour your heart into can become the source of your heaviest burden. Gates had to learn that leadership was more than building products. It was about carrying responsibility. The Dropout had transformed into a figure whose choices could alter the direction of technology for the world. And here lies the drama. Adversity did not destroy him. Instead, it reshaped him. Gates began to think not only about software, but also about society. The fire of the courtroom led to a new vision that would later guide his philanthropic work. Out of pressure came perspective, and out of trial came transformation. The turning point was realizing that success without responsibility is empty. Standing in those courtrooms, Gates could see the weight of his influence stretching far beyond business. He discovered that true leadership is measured not only by profits, but by the legacy you leave behind. In that sense, the trial was not just legal, it was deeply personal. So now I turn the question toward you. If you could change one habit this week, what would it be? Think of a tree standing in the middle of a storm. The wind bends its branches, rain soaks its roots, and for a moment it looks fragile. Yet when the storm passes, the tree is stronger, its roots digging deeper into the soil. Bill Gates's journey mirrors that tree. The storms of lawsuits, criticism, and doubt did not break him. They deepened his resolve and broadened his vision. life often works in the same way for us. The very seasons that seem unbearable become the soil where resilience grows. A garden does not flourish in perfect weather. It needs both sunshine and rain. Microsoft's setbacks were like those heavy rains, unwelcome at first, but essential for growth. This reframe offers us a gentler lens. Instead of labeling ourselves by a single mistake or setback, we can see these moments as part of a larger story. Gates was once known simply as a dropout, yet over time that label faded, replaced by words like innovator, leader, philanthropist. If the seasons of your life feel harsh right now, remember, they may be shaping a new name for you, too, so let your roots grow deeper through the struggles. Let your storms become the very proof that you are still standing, and trust that, like a garden after the rain, your own life can bloom again. Think, too, of how the garden shares its beauty with others once it heals. The flowers are not for the tree itself, but for everyone who passes by. Gates's resilience grew into generosity, reminding us that when we endure our storms, we are better able to shelter and inspire those around us. At the end of this journey, we see Bill Gates not just as a billionaire, but as a man who chose courage over certainty. He could have stayed in the comfort of Harvard, following the well-worn path of degrees and careers. Instead, he walked into the unknown, carrying little more than conviction and an unshakable belief in innovation. That decision reshaped technology and eventually philanthropy on a global scale. But the story is not really about Gates alone. It is about you. Each of us stands at moments when the easy path calls loudly, while a quieter, riskier path whispers us from the shadows. One promises safety, the other promises growth. Neither choice is simple, and neither is without cost. Yet your future is written in the courage of those decisions. So here is the question. At this moment, you stand between comfort and growth. Which path will you take? If you feel stirred by this story, I invite you to carry its lesson forward. Take one small risk this week, innovate in a corner of your life, or learn from a mistake you once tried to bury. In doing so, you may discover the very strength that has been waiting inside you all along. And maybe, years from now, when you look back, you will see that today's small little choice was the seed of something extraordinary. That is the power of daring, and it belongs not only to billionaires, but to you. If this video gave you something meaningful, share it with someone who needs encouragement today. And subscribe to keep walking with us on this journey of English and self-growth.